Hello and welcome back. Today we'll be going over how to create transitions between rooms and add a little transition effect, as well as an object that when our player character reaches that object, they will be moved to the next room. So that is our goal today. The first thing that we'll need to create is, of course, an object to facilitate these transitions. So let's go over to the objects, create a new object. And this object is going to be called obj underscore transition, sorry. We don't need to worry about a sprite for this one, yes, no sprite needed. And then we just need to go ahead and create a create event. This event, let's see if we maximize this. Where is it? On this side. Don't need to look at the rooms right now. Increase the font, F8, increases the size so we can nicely see it. And this create event for this brand new object is going to handle the size variables and mode setup. Now, this object is supposed to be how we can have a scene change between rooms. Rather than you just walking into the spot and immediately popping over into the next location, in this case, we want to be able to have a transition of black bars coming and covering the screen and then opening back up and revealing that you're now in the next room. So to achieve this, let's go ahead and get our width is simply equal to display underscore get underscore GUI underscore width open close parentheses. Our height is going to be equal to display get GUI underscore height open close parentheses. And then our height half is simply equal to our current height divided by 2. Now that we've got that, this is relevant because we want to, of course, know how wide the screen is, how tall the screen is, and then what is the middle point, since I want my bars to close in on the center. Now you, of course, could have bars closing on the other side. It'll be up to you, however you want to play around with these numbers. Then I'm going to have another variable percent target 1.2. This will be relevant for telling our program essentially how much of the screen that we want covered before we transition to the next room. You could do it at 1, and so as soon as it closes, it immediately reopens, but I do it at 1.2, so it technically overflows the room with extra black bars, just so that way there's a few moments before you jump into the next room, just for added effect. But otherwise, if you wanted to just fill up the screen, 1.0 is sufficient, but I'm going to do 1.2. You can, of course, mess around with this number as you see fit. Then we're going to make another enum, and this will be transition mode. With transition mode, we're going to have a couple of different states. The off state, the go to state, the restart state, and the intro state. This lists off everything that we want to have with our transitioning. Either it's not happening, you go to a room, you do a transition, you restart, you do a transition, or you intro and do a transition. Our initial mode that we're going to have whenever we start the game off is, of course, transition underscore mode dot intro. When the game begins, that is the default state. And then what is the current percentage? We're just going to give it to be 1. And then the target, what room do we want to be in? It's just whatever room we're currently in. This completes our create event. We can, if you right click anywhere in here, you should have the option to add a new event. And next, I want to add a step event. Here, this will cover next our progress of filling out the transition. This will handle what are we supposed to be doing at each of these stages. So if the mode is not off, transition underscore mode dot off. If it's not off, then that of course means we've got to be doing something. If the mode is equal to transition underscore mode dot intro, that tells us percent should be equal to maximum of, it's either whichever of these is the larger number, just ensures it doesn't go off the board. Our current percent value minus the maximum of our current percent value divided by 10 or 0.005. This is used just so that way as the value increases or decreases, we don't want it to be changing by too small of a point. And so we're subtracting by either a tenth of it or 0.005, whichever of these two is larger. We have the else event, and we follow a similar pattern. Copy this, go into here, but instead of max, we're going to have min. And in this case, we're going to have percent target, comma, percent plus, and let me shrink this side down, maximum of the percent target minus, and let's move over, percent divided by 10 or 0.005. That way our change is slightly more dynamic based off of how much of the screen we want it to actually fill up. And so it'll pick the smaller of these two values, either once we achieve 1.2 or as we slowly get closer towards 1.2 by performing the modification. Once we have this set up, we should then be able to have the intro mode complete. If percent is equal to our percent target, or our percent is currently 0, that tells us to switch modes. We've either completed or we're not working on anything at the moment. Switch mode. And so in the case that we're in transition underscore mode dot intro, that means we want to be doing switching our mode, now be transition mode off. If we reached our target and we were in the intro mode, then we're going to turn it off and break to close off that line. In the case that we're in transition mode dot go to, the mode will then switch into transition mode intro, and it'll do room underscore go to the specified target and break to close off that case. And finally, the last case that we'll address, transition underscore mode dot restart. In this case, the game will simply restart. We break to close off that block. And that's all we need inside of here. Again, going from the top down. If we're currently not in the off mode, then we check, are we in the intro mode? If we're in the intro mode, then the percent is going to be set equal to the maximum of either 0 or this other number, percent minus the max. Else, percent is going to be equal to the minimum, the smaller of these two values, our percent target or percent plus the maximum of target minus a tenth of the current percent or 0.005. If the percent is equal to our target percent or the percent is equal to 0, then switch our mode. Based off of what we're currently in, if we're currently in the intro, then turn it off. If we want to go to something, then that means initialize the intro and move us into that room. If it's a restart, then just restart the game. And that addresses our step event. And now the most important part is to create a draw GUI event. For draw GUI, this actually is the part where we draw black bars. If our current mode is not off, that tells us we're supposed to be doing something. So draw underscore set color is the color black. We draw a rectangle. Starting at the top left corner, going to our width and percent times height underscore half. And false for filling it. Then draw rectangle 0 and then our height, which is the complete bottom. And it's going to go as far as our width to the right side of the screen. And then it'll be the height minus the current percent that we're at, percent times height underscore half, and then again false. Sorry, the false is not for a fill, we want it to be filled. This is whether it wants to be an outline or not. We want the black bar to fill up the top portion and then the bottom portion, so we just have two rectangles actually being created. If we set this to true, then it'll just do the outline and leave the middle empty. Now this creates the transition, but by itself, it's not going to be doing as much as we would like it to be doing. Let's go ahead and create a script that will help finish out the rest of it. This object exists. Let's make sure we actually put it inside the room for our testing purposes. Let's throw it into the main room, object transition, throw it into our testing room, object transition, throw it into level 1, object transition. Once that's there, then make sure that you set this in the object transition, the little screen, to be persistent. We need this to be persistent between the rooms, so that way it knows what mode it's supposed to be in as we cycle through them. If it's not persistent, then we might run into some issues. Now we are set to create our script. Go in here, create script, and this script is going to be called our slide transition slide transition, enter, and there it goes. It gets updated over here. So we're going to have two input parameters. We're going to have our specified mode and our target room. Once we have that, our object transition, we're going to change that mode to now be equal to the mode that we've just been receiving. Then we will change our object transition target room to now be equal to whatever our target room is. Simple as that. Now, anytime that we want to actually do a transition, we just call this one script in our respective objects, and it'll correctly reference the object we just created and tell it what mode we want to go into and what room we need to be in. Then this leaves us to simply have to update 2 points, our restart and our menu. And so I have object room restart here, rather than just leaving it at room restart. We now can have, actually right now we only have a game restart set up, not a room restart. We do need to go back into our object transition and add in one other state. In here, after restart, room reset, comma, or I'll just call it restart as well, restart. So restart, I'm going to have that be game restart, so that way they're distinct. Going back into our step event, if we have game restart, we of course do a game restart. We then add one more case transition mode dot room restart. Then in here, we just do room restart and then break. Now we have all the cases that we need. Back to the room restart object, rather than calling this, I will instead have a nice setup that simply tells us to do the slide transition function that we just had. Slide transition script we just created. What mode do I want to go into? Transition mode dot, and in this case, I just want to have a room reset. Or room restart. Now, I will give you a warning saying that the script is expecting 2 input arguments, but only receives 1. In our case, we can safely get away with this because we don't need to change our room. Now, if you want to be safe, you can always just tell it to stay in the same room. That way you don't have that warning here. But for our purposes, this extra input argument does not actually get used. But it's making you aware of how it structures. You don't need the argument, but if you want to get rid of the warning, you would provide an argument. This argument does not get used. As with the room restart state, it just restarts the room. It doesn't matter what room you're in, it just restarts itself. Now that updates this one. The other spot that we had specified transitioning between different locations is of course in our menu. If we go over to the menu, we also had the step event inside here. Let's maximize this. Scroll down, and here we go. What do we do at each of these stages? And now we can have a nice setup here to specify in case 2, which is our top case, that's going to start the game. Instead of having room go to and then a number, we can do slide transition. Specify we're going to do transition mode dot go to, and then we're going to be going to specifically room level 1. Close parentheses. Now it knows what room we want to go to, and that we're going to do the go to transition. We can do the exact same thing here at the bottom portion. Whenever we go to the testing room here, we specify we want to go not to room level 1, but room testing. So shrinking this just so you can see everything, we replaced the previous code here, which just said to go to room 1, to now instead call our slide transition script, pass into it the fact that we want to set the mode to be go to, and specifically when we want to go to room level 1. And so this is a much more convenient setup for us, and it's a lot more consistent across everything that we want to work with. We just specify what room we want to go to, and it goes to it, and it has little animations. But as of the moment, we don't know what these animations are. I haven't shown you all yet. We kind of had to do a lot of setup just so that way we can see this happen. But assuming I typed everything correctly, whenever we run this, we should now get the opportunity to see the bars appear. There we go. In this case, we saw the bars appear, and we were able to notice that it slid through the rooms. So going to testing room, we see the same bars appear. Everything's working out fine so far. It doesn't impact anything else. If I hit tab, let's see, something has broken. Let's check what went wrong. Let's go to the room restart, slide transition, room restart, and going down to our transition object. Bring this down. Room restart just has the room restart, and oh yes, it doesn't actually cause anything to break. Let me redo that again. No, go to testing room, transitions just fine. I hit tab, it freezes everything. We seem to be having an issue with it actually restarting the room. Okay, after a little bit of testing, what I actually forgot was to include resetting the mode. Whenever we did a room restart, we kind of got stuck in the state and it wasn't really doing anything, because whenever we restart the game, or sorry, restart the room, we need to make sure we switch the mode to now do an intro, since we're about to go into an intro state for the room again. Without this update, it was not operating correctly, as it didn't know what state it was supposed to be in anymore. With game restart, of course, that goes all the way back to the front, and that begins the program, begins the game already in the intro mode. And so we had to manually set that here, and that addresses that issue. So make sure you add in that one line. I apologize for forgetting that earlier. Now, as we begin the program again, or the game, we go in, we can clearly see the bars appear, they close. I can go into the testing room, it's in here, I do my operations, everything still works out just fine. I hit tab, and we do the restart with the bars working out just fine. Now, this completes slide transitions. Now we have a convenient way to jump between different locations. The last thing I want to add is a quick way that I can show how to move between levels or between our rooms. I'm going to create a simple little sprite. Let's see, where is sprite? And this is meant to represent kind of like a portal that I'm going to step on, and it takes me to the next location. Let me set it to be gray, something quick to draw on the fly. It's not going to look great, but y'all get the gist of it. And so there we go. This is going to be my portal. Let me do a quick little outline of it. Actually, doing this is a lot more reliable. Yeah, close enough. I can perfect it later. But this will represent my portal. Let me go ahead and rename this. Rename SPR_portal. I'm going to now create a brand new object. You can, of course, use anything that you want to represent it. This is going to represent the end level thing that you go into, you reach, and then it transitions you to the next room. Some ideas, for instance, could be in Mario. Mario jumps, reaches the flag. That flag determines that he's made it to the end of the level, and then he goes into the little castle and he goes to the next spot. Sonic always saw the signpost. He ran past the signpost, start spinning, and that meant you transition to the next level. In my case, I'm going to keep the little space theme in mind, and I step on the portal and I jump into the next room. So let me go ahead and create actually, I need to make sure the origin point looks good. Let's go back to the sprite for the portal. And I'm going to set the origin point to be up here. And set the collision box for this to be at the very top. And so once I reach that spot, then I'll transition. All right, that is saved, and then go to our room. Or sorry, not the room, our new object that we're going to create here. And this is going to be obj_level end. And I'm going to go grab my sprite for the portal. With this here, I then just add one event, a quick collision event, where if I collide with the player object, this simply has us move to the next room. Move to next level is more appropriate. So slide transition script we just had before. Now we have the transition mode, switch to go to, and I go to my target. But what is my target room? This is where we're going to be referencing another variable, because in each room, you're going to, of course, go somewhere else. We can easily here create a new variable called target, and it is going to be an expression, and we specify the room. So by default, I'm just going to tell everything to go to room menu and just leave that be. Now, whenever I go into my testing room, for instance, let me click off. In my testing room, I'm going to go over to the end of the level. I'll place this on the same level as the player, and my end level object, I'm going to place it right here. I'll leave that be. We'll mess around with it later. And then I'm going to double click here and change the variable. I don't want to go to the menu. I want to go to room level 1. And then in room level 1, I'm going to go ahead and throw in this, nope, on the player level. Again, we haven't actually messed around with level 1 in a bit, so hopefully nothing breaks. Everything should be good. This is just for the purpose of demonstrating. This one will actually take us to the menu. In fact, I'll just leave this right here, so I just drop directly into it. Now, assuming I typed everything correctly, we should be able to easily transition between our different locations. So, jump into my testing room, get all the way to the end of the level. I survived, because right now none of the aliens can do anything to us. Get to the end, I jump onto the portal. I've jumped over here, jump into this portal, and I'm back to the start. We now have an easy way to jump between levels. So once we get to designing our full levels, you just place that at the end or wherever you want it to be, and you just jump on top of it or into it or whatever structure you have, and then you'll be good to go. So if you have any questions or need any clarifications, just let me know in class. Otherwise, we'll end it there with now being able to transition nicely between rooms with a nice black bar effect, as well as placing little objects at the end of our levels so that way we can jump between levels. Everyone, have a good one, and I'll see y'all next time.